The next thing to mention is the Reform Bill of 1832. Now, the Reform Bill was an attempt to bring some common sense into our voting system. It allowed more people to vote, but they still had to be men and they still had to have a deal of money or they had to have land. It wasn't by any means a proper democratic chamber. But you wouldn't believe the fuss it caused. When the bill was defeated, for instance, supporters of the bill, ordinary working class men and women who certainly wouldn't have got the vote by the bill, and I mean burnt down the town of Bristol completely almost, Derby and Nottingham. There was riots everywhere. It's a very complicated procedure, but Lord Grey's Whig ministry finally got the bill through the House of Commons, and although the House of Lords had a massive Conservative majority, they were so frightened of a revolution that the Duke of Wellington invited them all to dinner on the night of the vote on the grounds that they could not dare to refuse such an invitation, and presumably, fearing revolution himself, allowed the Reform Bill to go through. It didn't make that much difference in the end. It did mean that some of the constituencies where nobody lived were abolished, but it still left the voting system in a real mess. Our next vote of confidence, though, is Robert Peel. Now, in 1834, the Prime Minister resigned, Lord Melbourne, and Robert Peel, for a bizarre reason, because they couldn't find anybody else, was Prime Minister, Chancellor, Home Secretary and Foreign Secretary all at once. It's never happened again, and it'll never happen since. And he became Prime Minister for a few months in a very, very minority situation. He had hardly any seats. He had a great number of people against him in the opposition. So, in April of 1835, the House passed a report against the government's wishes. At the time, Peel had 100 seats less than the opposition, so he was almost going to lose. The report was on the Church of Ireland, which was like the Protestant church in Ireland. The vote was 285 to 258, and Peel again resigned the next day. And Peel was involved again in 1846 in one of the most dramatic events in House of Commons history. Now, nobody, apart from the historian G.M. Trevelyan, understands the Corn Laws. I don't, and I've been reading about them since I was 16. But it was a devilish issue. It was to do with tariffs. It was to do with whether you should put higher prices on foreign goods so that your goods had a better chance of being sold. Now, where have you heard that one before?
All over the place.
Exactly what's going on at the moment. So Peel wanted to abolish the Corn Law. Apart from the fact that there were millions dying in Ireland because of the potato famine, while there was corn not being eaten, while there was food being thrown away, where have we heard that before? And Peel wanted the Corn Laws abolished, but the right wing of his party, led by a young lad who no one had ever heard of at this stage, called Benjamin Disraeli, he became the leader of what was known as the Protectionists. They were the ones who wanted to keep the high tariffs on foreign corn. They were determined to get Peel. Peel got the Corn Law Bill through the House of Commons with the support of the opposition completely. It would be like Mr Corbyn voting for the deal next week to get it through because he thought it was the only course open to the country. That's how significant it was. The opposition votes with the government to get a bill through because he thinks it's right for the people and will get them cheaper corn. But anyway, they get that through, but then a few days later, there is another vote on, I'm just moving through my notes here because I'd forgotten what this vote was. Yes, over the Irish Coercion Bill. Now, this was a bill to increase the number of constables in Ireland because of disturbances in the Irish countryside. So on the 25th of June 1846, Peel's government was beaten 292 to 219 on the same day that the Corn Law Bill passed through the House of Lords. He was defeated by his right wing, led by Disraeli and Lord Stanley, and by the opposition, who'd helped him to get the Corn Law Bill through. Such is politics. Now we go back to Lord Melbourne again, back to June 1841. Now this one was really dramatic. He had been Prime Minister for 6 years at this point. Lord Melbourne, whose surname was Lamb, very famous family, Lady Caroline Lamb and all sorts. Some people have called him Queen Victoria's boyfriend. I doubt whether he was, but he was her first Prime Minister, and they were very, very close. June 1841, by this time, Melbourne had been Prime Minister for 6 years. Lord Melbourne's motion in opposition was that the government did not have the confidence of this House. Now, there's a thing called the Royal Address, and it's done at the start of every new Parliament, and it's to congratulate the monarch on her continuance and so on and so on. They usually get some young backbencher to deliver the speech. Anyway, Peel knew the numbers. There was a 5-day debate, and then 312 votes to 311 on the 4th of June 1841. Melbourne's government is out, and the Queen is absolutely furious. Can't we stop Peel in some way? Whatever. No, Melbourne says to her, no, madam, you have to call him. You have to call on Mr Peel to form the next government. And very, very grudgingly, that's exactly what Queen Victoria did.
Dun, 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 dun.